So if I was to say the word gonads to you, I'd be curious what people think. Because if you're like the American audience that I work for, you think of testicles, you think of sex, and you get really uncomfortable and start giggling a lot. If you ask a scientist what they think about the word gonads, you get a totally different response. There's no giggling to start. They think it's male and female, and they don't actually talk about sex. They talk about the embryo and development. And so as a science journalist working at Radiolab, which is an audio documentary program in the US, I realized that there was a real big disconnect between what the world was understanding about this aspect of biology and what scientists were actually thinking. And so I thought to myself, how can I talk about this gap? How can I talk about developmental biology and sex determination, biological sex, in a space that is full of preconceived notions and full of, well, politics and moral attributes? And so we did Gonads the Podcast. And I'll just play you a little clip.
Gonads are magical organs. They are. Gonads are magical organs.
Gonads are magic.
So we decided that we would just lean into the irreverency. And what we did here was, if you're facing this challenge, we decided, okay, we're not going to do politics at all. I don't even mention like sex determination, and I never say the word gender. But the idea was to bring together scientists and artists and musicians and comedians for a series of audio documentary stories and also a series of live events. And we did 6 podcasts total, and we did 2 live events. And the reactions were really interesting. We also did different listener engagement programs. So this is, we had listeners send in their the ways that they learned about sex and sex ed. The Bible is actually on this list. But you can go online. This is over 200 books where you can sort of, for all ages and orientations, figure out a way to learn about the body. We also did something called Misconceptions, where listeners sent in stories about trying to conceive. And this was partnered with a website that caters to queer and straight 18 to 34-year-olds. And then we got a lot of feedback from different groups that we were pretty excited about. We worked with teens. This is one who talks about being LGBTQ, how they learned a lot from all the different episodes. One of my favorites is a tweet from a trans individual who said our episode about the chromosomes X and Y actually let them understand themselves better as a trans individual. This is one of my favorites. This is from a conservative white dad who's 75 and said he finally knows the word intersex. And so I will just say that for us, all it takes is a recorder. You know, this is what we make podcasts and audio out of. I do have like a fancy sound booth studio, but you do not need one of those. You just need a recorder and a little bit of curiosity, and you can come away with a lot of knowledge. And we learned a lot. You know, we learned things like X and Y do not always equal female and male. That testosterone is not just a male hormone. That we all are start in the embryo with the possibility of becoming, you know, of growing either ovaries or testes. And that decision is not made one time only when you're an embryo. That decision keeps getting made over and over molecularly as you go on. And I also just learned that, you know, ovaries and testes, while we just think of them as like these uncomfortable physiological parts that no one really talks about, are so crucial to our development, and both biologically and emotionally, that it felt like such a fun, kind of a reverent concept to talk about. So thank you.